He walked into the store just like any other man might. No flashy suit, no expensive watch on his wrist, no entourage trailing behind him. Just a calm black man stepping through the glass doors of a luxury watch showroom, the kind of place where timepieces cost more than most cars. The store was filled with exquisite designs, intricate craftsmanship, and behind every display, the story of success. What the staff didn't realize, what no one in that room could have guessed, was that this man wasn't just any visitor. He was the CEO, the creator, the very soul behind every watch on those shelves. But none of that mattered to the people watching him now. They barely glanced his way, barely even acknowledged his presence. One employee, barely whispering, leaned toward a colleague and said, "Does he even know where he is?" As if he was some lost stranger wandering into a world that wasn't meant for him. To them, he didn't look the part. He wasn't supposed to be here. And because of that, he was ignored, doubted, and dismissed. But what they didn't know was that this quiet man held all the power in that building. And within 5 minutes, the judgment they passed so casually would shatter assumptions, end a career, and remind everyone that true authority isn't about appearances. It's about who you are underneath it all. If you believe respect should never depend on the color of someone's skin or how they dress, if you believe no one should be judged by their race, class, or background, then don't just watch. Take a stand. Hit that subscribe button right now, because stories like this aren't just rare moments. They reflect the world we live in every day. By subscribing, you're choosing to stand with those who demand fairness, dignity, and change. This channel shares the real stories that need to be heard, stories that challenge injustice and give a voice to those too often ignored. So if that matters to you, don't scroll past. Join us. The CEO decided to visit one of his flagship stores without telling anyone. No flashy announcements, no press waiting outside, no assistants or bodyguards by his side. Just a simple man dressed in a plain shirt and jeans, carrying nothing but quiet confidence and a sharp eye. He wanted to see the store as it really was, how his customers were treated when he wasn't there to oversee every interaction. This wasn't a planned inspection or a publicity stunt. It was a genuine attempt to understand the experience of the everyday shopper, to walk in their shoes for a few moments and observe without interference. He believed that true leadership meant knowing every part of his business, not just the numbers, but the people, the service, and the atmosphere. As he stepped inside, the polished floors gleamed under the bright showroom lights. Glass cases displayed rows of meticulously crafted watches, each one a testament to his team's dedication and skill. To an outsider, it was a place of beauty and success. To him, it was his vision come to life. But something felt off immediately. The staff didn't approach him with smiles or welcoming gestures. Instead, there was hesitation, a subtle shift in body language, as if they sensed he didn't belong. They exchanged quick glances, unsure how to treat this man who looked so ordinary, so unlike the typical luxury clientele they were used to serving. He noticed how customers nearby were greeted warmly and attended to quickly, while he stood there, ignored. When he tried to make eye contact, he was met with averted gazes and forced politeness. It was a silent message. He wasn't welcome, at least not in the way others were. Throughout those moments, the CEO quietly observed the subtle acts of exclusion, the curt responses, the distancing, the unspoken assumptions based on nothing more than his appearance. It was a lesson in silent discrimination, a reminder that even success and status couldn't always shield someone from prejudice. He didn't say a word. He didn't create a scene. Instead, he made a mental note of everything, every glance, every whisper, every hesitation. Because what he experienced in those few minutes spoke volumes about the challenges that still exist beneath the surface, even in places meant to celebrate achievement. This visit was supposed to be a simple check-in, but it turned into a powerful revelation, And what came next would change the store forever. From the very first step he took inside the store, the atmosphere shifted. It was subtle at first, a barely perceptible change in the energy around him. But it was there. The glances that flickered his way weren't warm or curious. They were cautious, skeptical, even dismissive. The kind of looks that say, "You don't belong here," without ever speaking the words aloud. He moved forward with quiet confidence, expecting nothing but professionalism. After all, this was his store, yet the silence that greeted him was deafening. No friendly, "Welcome," no, "Can I help you?" Just a stillness that seemed to weigh down the air. The staff, who should have been eager to serve a customer, any customer, instead seemed determined to avoid him. His eyes met the store manager's for a moment, and the man's expression told a story all on its own. The manager's polite smile was tight, forced, like a mask hiding something else, a hesitation, an uncertainty. But that thin veneer cracked the instant the manager noticed one key detail. The man wasn't wearing a Rolex. In that moment, the unspoken assumptions were laid bare. The manager didn't see a successful business leader or the owner of the brand. He saw a man who didn't fit the expected image of a luxury client. The man was judged not by his words, his presence, or his knowledge, but by what he wore, or rather, what he didn't wear. Then came the rejection. The words hit hard but were delivered coldly, almost rehearsed. "We're appointment only," the manager said without looking him in the eye. "Our collection isn't meant for browsing." It was a dismissal disguised as policy, a barrier thrown up not because of store rules, but because of an invisible line the manager refused to cross. Not once did the manager ask if the man needed assistance. Not once did he pause to consider who this visitor might be, the CEO himself. There was no curiosity, no attempt to engage, only a polite but firm gatekeeping designed to shut him out. It was a moment heavy with irony and injustice. Here was the man who had built the brand from the ground up, denied entry by his own staff. The one who had poured years of sweat and sacrifice into every watch on those shelves was treated like an outsider, judged and excluded because he didn't fit their narrow expectations. But he didn't react with anger or confrontation. Instead, he stood silently, absorbing the rejection. Knowing this moment spoke louder than words. It was a harsh lesson in how deeply bias can run, even in places that should represent success, sophistication, and respect. What the manager didn't realize was that this moment would be the last time he would exercise such authority in the store. Because the story wasn't over. Far from it. The CEO didn't react the way anyone might expect. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't storm out or lash out. Instead, he remained calm, almost serene. The weight of the moment was heavy, but anger wasn't his response. He chose a different path, a path that would speak louder than any outburst. He looked the manager straight in the eye and asked one simple question. "Is the owner around?" The manager's smirk was quick and dismissive, as if he thought this was a joke. "He's not available to the public," he replied with a tone dripping in condescension, clearly assuming that this casually dressed man was just another customer to be brushed aside. But the CEO's face didn't change. He pulled out his phone, his fingers moving with purpose and calm precision. He made a single call, his voice low but steady, saying just a few words. The call was brief, yet the effect was immediate and profound. Moments later, the atmosphere in the store shifted without a word. The regional director, someone with clear authority, walked in. His presence was commanding but composed, carrying with him the respect the CEO deserved but had been denied. He didn't hesitate. Without looking at the manager, he approached the CEO directly and greeted him with two simple words. "Good afternoon, sir." Those words cut through the tension like a knife. They rewrote the story in that very instant. The CEO was no longer a stranger to be dismissed or judged. He was the man who held the highest power in the room, the person who owned the brand and everything it stood for. The staff who had ignored and avoided him moments ago suddenly became aware of his true identity. Their body language shifted, eyes dropped, voices softened. The manager's smug smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty and regret. In that moment, the invisible barriers of bias and discrimination crumbled under the undeniable force of authority. The CEO's quiet strength had flipped the power dynamic completely. What started as a cold rejection ended with a clear message. Respect is not earned by appearance or assumptions, but by truth and standing firm in one's identity. And for the manager who had denied service, the consequences were swift and severe. The atmosphere in the store had shifted completely, but what came next stunned everyone present. The staff looked around at each other, faces full of confusion and disbelief. Whispers filled the room like a low murmur, as if the air itself was struggling to process what had just happened. The manager, who had carried himself with such assured control only moments before, now looked pale, his confident mask slipping away. The weight of realization hit him hard, sinking in like a cold wave. The man they had ignored, dismissed, and subtly mocked was no ordinary customer. He was the founder of the brand, the boss, their boss. For years, this man had built the company from nothing, crafting every detail, every watch, every piece of the legacy with his own hands and vision. Yet here he was, treated like an outsider in his own house. The CEO didn't raise his voice or lash out. He looked calmly at the manager and said with measured clarity, "I wanted to see how customers are treated when I'm not here. Now I know." His words carried the weight of undeniable truth. This wasn't about a simple mistake or a misunderstanding. This was about judgment, a judgment made not from facts or fairness, but from bias, from seeing someone through a lens clouded by prejudice. Then, with steady resolve, the CEO asked for the manager's keys. The request hung heavy in the air. Everyone in the room held their breath, knowing what this meant. The manager, caught in his own web of prejudice, had just been terminated. Not quietly, not behind closed doors, but right there, in front of the entire staff and any customers present. It was a clear message. Discrimination and poor judgment would no longer be tolerated, no matter who you were. But before walking out, the CEO turned one last time to the gathered staff and left them with a final, powerful reminder. Don't ever let the color of someone's skin blind you to who they really are. Those words echoed through the room long after he was gone. A call for change, a demand for respect, and a reminder that true leadership means standing up against injustice, no matter where it hides. The story didn't end with a job lost. It ended with a lesson learned. A lesson in respect, dignity, and the power of quiet strength. If that hit you, even just a little, don't keep scrolling. Give this video a like, drop a comment, and share your thoughts. Pass it along to someone who needs to hear this story. And if you believe dignity should never depend on who you are or how you look, hit that subscribe button. There are many more stories like this waiting to be told, and they deserve to be heard.